Friends, good morning. I think at the outset, I want to thank you all for joining me this webinar. The topic of presentation today is demystifying supply chain management. I know there are various misunderstandings about supply chain. What is supply chain? So I'll try to clarify those terms around. I'll try to clarify the future of SCM in terms of carrier, in terms of what is going on in the market around. Now, coming back to the next ones, I don't need to spend time on introducing myself. I hope everybody knows it. So let me go to the next. What we are going to cover today. So what we are planning to cover today is understanding SCM and its role. What is supply chain management? And what is the purpose of this? Importance of SCM. Why SCM is getting importance around, which was not there when I started my career. When I was doing my MBA in operations, supply chain was one small chapter. But nowadays in the US, I did my MBA from there, so in the US nowadays you find supply chain is a major. On the contrary, I would find operation is one part of it. The whole scenario is reversed. While in India, I know still we don't call supply chain management as MBA, we call still MBA operation, and supply chain is one small part of it. Value chain versus supply chain, we'll talk about it. The structuring of the supply chain, the push system, the pull system. People talk around that my system is very agile, my system is very efficient. What exactly it means? We talk about just in time. We'll talk about those terms as well. What drives the supply chains around? And logistics in supply chain, because logistics is one of the key foundation of supply chain. And the future. I'm linking the future of SCM with Industrial Revolution 4. Because the Industrial Revolution has also come up. So with that, new technologies have come up around. And those technologies, how are they affecting the supply chain? Are we ready for this? That's what we're going to talk about. Let's start very basic thing. I felt this is a wonderful quote I could find somewhere. Supply chains are everywhere. You might be thinking of a biggest company, or even your household. When you have food on the dining table, if you look back, there is a supply chain behind it. So supply chain is everywhere. So in short, I would say we all have a supply chain experience. Even if you don't know it, but supply chain is there. So this is how it is there. Just to again elaborate the same thing. As a human persons, we get many goods, services all the time. When you get up in the morning, you go for the breakfast, you have eggs, milk, bread, whatever you have. And then when after the breakfast you're driving to the office. But all these goods, if you really go back, have a closer look, they all have a supply chain. The car also has a supply chain before it was made. Eggs, milk, bread, whatever you're getting on the dining table also have a history of supply chain. Some people might be thinking around that the supply chain has been for ages. Yes. If I go back, that means these things you have been eating earlier also, and they also had a supply chain. But the only complexity which has changed now, that the supply chain has become more complex, the technology has come up, and you are looking at the global process. You're not stuck with one supplier next door. Wherever you get the best deal, you buy it. So in the process, the supply chain has become more complex and visibility is becoming better. So all that thing is making it a different type of supply chain. So if you look at all these functions, activities, transactions, where people are connected, we call them as integrated chain. So the people who come up in the chain are suppliers, manufacturer, somebody is distributing it, and finally the consumer. If I look at the dining table, somebody is supplying, somebody is making some goods around, somebody distributing you, and somebody at the end of the day you are buying it and you are the consumer. So this is how I call around the supply chain has been there for many ages, but the term supply chain was coined only 35 years back. But over the time, supply chain concept has changed, methodology has changed. Now here comes what is supply chain. I gave you a rough idea around the concept why, but let me now explain. There's always a demand. You need a car, you need a TV, you need a phone, you need a laptops, you need desktop. So there's a demand. So the demand is generated and somebody has to fill the demand. Now to meet the demands, something has to come from the supply side. And the supply side, if I go to the remotest part, the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, or even I go to the mother earth from where the raw material comes in, so there's a supply chain. So supply is there, demand is there, and then somebody is bridging the gap. So on the supply side, we are looking around, when is the product made, where is it made, which supplier is doing around, how much and many are required, and how and when delivered. If I'm a supplier, I'm looking at all these aspects. On the demand side, certainly we are looking around, when is the product required, where is it needed. If I'm a distributor, I'm looking at all these things around, how many and when it is needed, what is the mix required around, what distribution. So basically we are balancing the supply and demand. Let's get again a little bigger overview on this. So in the supply chain we have the links. Somebody has to be consumer. I'm calling as a customer, but customer may not be the consumer. Customer could be retailer also. But the retailer is selling to a consumer. So there is a customer. Customer, you can look at the bigger picture. Somebody is planning it. Because the expectations are changing, the demand is changing. If demands are changing, certainly, then the planning also has to be done. Forecasting of the supply. I think to me, this is a very important parameters of the success of the supply chain. Many companies I've worked with now as a consultant, even before that, I worked with an e-commerce company. The biggest trouble with each one is to forecast the demand. And difficulty comes for those products which have a shelf life of 6 months. You are in the business of mobile phones or something fancy thing which has a life of 3 months, 4 months. And if your demand is not done well, forecast is not good, you will end up with surplus goods or less of them. I mean, you may lose the customer. Next comes procurement. Procurement is a very important part of it. Logistics. So logistic also has got these basically pillars. Inventory is one of the pillars. Warehouse is another pillar, where you learn how to design the warehouse, how to manage the warehouse, distributions. How do I distribute? How do I connect with my last mile connect? Transportation, full load transportation, less than container load transportations. And lastly, but not the least is important, is reverse logistics. And reverse logistics is becoming very, very crucial. I think is one of the struggling points for many in the e-commerce, where the reverse is, in the Western country maybe 5%, in India it is around 8 to 9%. So you can imagine your sale may be $2 billion, but if 8% is reverse, it's an area of concern. So in supply chain management, you can see, you have to look into all these aspects. So shortly again, what is supply chain? It is connecting one side the supplier, then you could have even further supplier, tier 1 supplier, tier 2 supplier, tier 3 supplier, customers. Customer could be consumer at the end of the day. So it's connecting them. So all the goods and services, whatever you do, whatever you have, they basically start from one end and reaches the other end. And to reach this, there's a procurement involved. There's an operation which we may call manufacturing. Operation means it could be converting input into output. And even if this conversion has been outsourced, if you're working in a company like Apple or any big companies nowadays, the manufacturing is also outsourced. So in short, you have a totally outsourcing activity, procurement, distribution, retail, and the customer. So this whole chain comprises of suppliers, raw material manufacturers, intermediate goods manufacturers. Somebody may be giving you finished goods also. Somebody may be taking care of your whole distribution and wholesalers, retailers, customers. So this is what we call the chain which connects all of them is its supply chain. I know in many places, workshop I go around, they link supply chain with only transportation. This is chain to supply. But they forget around the supply chain means whatever is required in this chain to ensure supply to the customers, starting from supplier, the complete is a chain. So let me again emphasize on it. I think everybody should understand. I know one or two programs I attended on. Whenever I go for supply chain workshop, I see people are only transport people. They think they are the supply chain. So I think there's a misunderstanding and we need to clarify that. The two definitions again I would like to put up, which is coming from one from our ISM USA headquarters, which says the design and management of seamless value-added process. So that means you have these players in the chain. As I said to you in the beginning, it was also existing in the past when we used to have food item coming from the villages and to our dining table. Supply chain was there, but it was seamless. It was not seamless. It has silos. There was no focus on value addition. There was no focus on wastages in the chain around. So that major change has come around. That means now the supply chains which we are talking around, we're trying to make it seamless. It moves end to end. It is not silos oriented. Focus is on values. Focus is just in time. Focus is also to make it cost efficient. So this is the major change around, I could say, around the supply chain. And this is how the terms came later. 35 years back, the word was coined SCM. And that's what we use. So here you can see the various players. Source, supplier. Source could be Mother Earth. Supplier who digs it out, makes the steel for you, makes the plastic for you, converts it. Now that conversion, either you do it or somebody else does for you. Somebody else assembles for you, but the design is yours. Proprietary rights are with you. It goes to the distributors, retailers, consumers. So in short, you are doing around is a fund flow is there, obviously from consumer side to the person who is supplying you. Information is flowing on both sides. So if I look at the old supply chain which was there 100 years back and 50 years back, information was very hunch type. There was no clear information on real-time basis. There was no real-time information. Everybody will say, guys, okay, last year I sold this much. This year, okay, add 10%, this is what is going to be the information. Oh, I have these problems. So information was very distorted. So this is how I would say around the goods are moving, the funds are moving, and then the information is moving both sides. And the value-added service. And at the end, the sales service is also there, after sales service. So this is what the chain is. Now this chain is relevant for both goods and services. So it is relevant for both goods and services. So services also have their chain. I might be in a consulting business, but I may not have experts in everything. I may hire someone to support me on the consulting. Let's say I'm doing a project on somebody for digitizations. I get someone to help me up. So that means I outsource some of the activities. Then after doing, I wrap them up, pack them up, and give it to the consumer. And then at the end of the day, I provide them the after-sales support also. So in service industry as well, there is a chain. Goods also is a chain. The only difference I could say broadly, in the case of goods, supply chain is longer, while in the case of services, supply chain may be a little smaller. That's why if you look at the figures of, in terms of amount spent on supply chain, if you go to a good manufacturing company, top company with the Chryslers, Fords, even Suzuki, whichever company you talk around, if you look at the cost of the whole supply chain, the money which is spent on supply chain activity, including procurement, logistics, warehousing, storage, is around 70% of the whole sales revenue. The salaries and other may be only 15 to 20%. So in the manufacturing companies, the top companies, certainly it is reaching around 65 to 70%. So you can imagine that you control those people who are in the supply chain. They control a bigger purse of the company. If any change has to happen with supply chain people. So this is where I feel this function is becoming very, very important today if we want to compete globally. While in the case of service industry, presently it may be around 25-30%, but there is a trend on that side also. I remember one company which is dealing with IT sectors. Obviously, all IT sectors, they get the contract in the US, Europe, and other places around, they were doing themselves. Now they're trying to do more of outsourcing. So more outsourcing means your contracting business goes up. So which is today 30%, may become 40, maybe become 50. Since service industry also, people are moving. I've seen many companies they don't own the software, but they design the concept, but somebody else does the coding, somebody else does the backup part. But, so in short, the supply chain role is becoming bigger. I think this is for everybody who's in the supply chain business, I think this gives a wonderful ideas what covers it. It's a SCOR model. It was set up by Supply Chain Operation Reference model, we call it. The very beginning is plan, plan, plan. Your company also starts from planning. So planning means basically demand understanding. How much is the demand? What I need to do around. So planning the resources, planning the procurement. So based on the plan, you make a source. Then source makes, the source when you got something, then you're converting them into your product. The make part. The make part could be a packaging. Somebody else might be making for you, and then you're putting your label on that. You're delivering it. And after delivering, something might be coming as a return. Even if you go to the supplier, which are internal or external, tier 1, tier 2, or supplier, story is same. So when I say supplier internal means, you have a big plant, but some part of your company might be supplying you engine, some might be giving you brakes, somebody might be giving something. So it's internal, but sometimes you will think, guys, why should I have this? My niche is my design. I don't want to make it. Let somebody else do for me. So this is where I think gives you very good idea about SCM. So same thing has been explained a little bit different ways. So one is supplier side, one is customer side. So three things are moving, as you saw. Materials are moving from supplier to customers. Information is being shared. So that integration is required. Which if I go older supply chain, this was not there. Funds are moving, obviously the supplier is supplying you, they need the funds. Here's the one small idea around supply chain cost. Let's look around one approach. Let's say we are in the apparel industry. Manufacturers makes it, distributor, retailer, customer. The shirt cost maybe 1,500. But suppose if I remove the distributors, and this is what we are learning today in the e-commerce business. We are cutting down the layers. So the mean manufacturer says, guys, okay, I want to deal directly with the retailer. And I have online orders, you can place order to me. I don't need distributors. The shirt cost close to 1,050. And if you become more smarter, the way we are doing today, B2C, you have the catalogs, you go online, and even in the catalog also, if you're dealing directly with the manufacturers, the prices could go even still further. You can imagine these layers of people, if you can cut down, that's the beauty of the supply chain. So when we talk of designing the supply chain, designing means cutting down the hierarchy, cutting down the cost, making it more optimum, cutting down the lead time, cutting down the inventory level. So you can imagine the complexity of supply chain. That's what we can do. Now, historically, when we talk of the older supply chain, which used to be past functional silos, I've done my job. I'm a finance guy, I've done my job. I'm a procurement guy, I've done my job. I'm a logistic guy, I've done my job. Everybody has done a great job, but at the end of the day, all are not integrated. So today's we are focusing a lot on integration of flow. We don't want things getting stuck one place. We want the flow of the goods around. I've got 10 machines in the production line. If one machine makes one part, then I'm getting the pile of parts when the other machine is not ready to accept it. So we have to ensure it should be less of inventories. Things should be moving smoothly around. So that is what the focus today is. Whether you are in manufacturing or in service, the focus is all about integration and making it a lean process. So in short, the central theme of supply chain is integration. If we are not integrating them, then supply chain, we are not having a supply chain. We are still working as silos. We are not building the synergies around of various departments, various functions. You might be having 20 departments, but at the end of the day, the customer, they look for their goods and service. They don't care which department you are. Your survival of the company depends on whether the goods are received in time or not, at right price. They don't care that the one department has done a great job, other department, that is your internal call. So you need to ensure integration of activities around. This is another one cartoon which gives you some ideas around. Now here are 4 or 5 people in a company. It could be service industry, could be manufacturing industry. 2 people are struggling around, but others they say, oh, I've done my job. But they forget this boat is like a company. If this boat sinks, their jobs are also gone. So it means we have to work as a collective team. We need to have a common objective. We can't lose sight of the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the boat has to pass on smoothly. The company has to have a good business. So we all have to work in sync with each other. That's what it means. And that's what supply chain is trying to focus on. So in supply chain, obviously there's a demand planning. Demand planning is the biggest crucial thing. You go to a company like Apple, go down to any big companies, this is the key focus. People with the highest educations are hired for this job. Best experience, best knowledge, because this is becoming nowadays, in big companies which are dealing with globally with millions of distributors and understanding it, you can't wait for the messages and emails. They work on a real time. They work on artificial intelligence. They work on big data. So the demand planning is becoming the very crucial thing. And they are the most highly paid people who are doing the demand planning. Then come on, the last one is in between is supply planning. So supply planning is trying to see, okay, from where to get the parts, from where to get this, where to assemble it, where to get the transportation. But the last one is demand fulfillment. Sometimes we have seen the supply planning is done well, but the demand fulfillment is steady. So the 2 parts which are very important around from the value addition, demand planning and demand fulfillment. So the fulfillment also becomes very important. So this gives you again a bigger picture of the supply chain in a pictorial form. Upstream side, downstream side. Downstream is toward the customers where the things are flowing like a water stream. Up means from where the goods are moving. At the end of the day, the goods are coming from the supplier or from the mother of the raw material. Upstream and then goes downstream toward the customer. So keep this factor in mind. Sometimes people confuse what is upstream, what is downstream. Downstream is at the end of the day who's consuming it. Like in a river, who takes the water at the downline is the downstream. Upstream is whether it's Himalaya or what. Same way here. We're looking at matching of supply side and demand side. And majority companies today are struggling, I would say in India, and more with those companies which are global companies, which are having a base in every country, multinational companies. I think demand is the major crucial factor. And demand changes every week. While you might have planned on a yearly basis, it doesn't work. So you really need to work it out whether we have this. So the lastly again shows around what we are expecting in supply chain. I know in the case of procurement 101, all of us know about the 5 R's. Here we're talking of the right products, right price, right store, right quantity, and right customer also. And the right time also. It should reach at the right time. And all these put together will give you the best profit. Coming back to the importance part of the supply chain, I think I've already given you some ideas around the 70% of the sales revenue, particularly for manufacturing, I would call, is spent on supply related activity. This could be a company like Airbus, could be any company around worldwide. I can talk across the world, I'll say, and many of the companies for whom I have done consultancy, 70% of the sales revenue. When I say 70%, again, please, procurement is part of it, movement is part of it, storage is part of it, control of the, all those things around. And the type of problem which you are facing around supply shortages, machine is down, which has a snowball effect. Either inventories have become too high, you demand planning was X product, but then you find X is not selling, but the Y brand is selling. Inefficient logistics, people are waiting, machines are waiting, but people are not able to deliver you. Low order fulfillment rates, ineffective promotions, all these factors could affect the supply chain. And these all leads to inefficiencies. So supply chain is becoming a very popular, I think, important subject. I rightly said around, today's companies are not competing, it is the supply chain competing around. So if we can make our supply chain lean, efficient, I think that's what is important. Now here let me clarify a few things about supply chain in the value chain. Now supply chain is all about integration of all activities. Activities could be, procurement is a function, but then activities could be something different, more than that. So you're doing the process of sourcing, procurement. Now I'm trying to define that the sourcing could be like a strategic sourcing, trying to make a procurement could be a tactical procurement, a transactional procurement. Conversion. Conversion means you're trying to convert input to outputs. Logistic is again combination of all factors, transportation, warehousing, inventory management, they're all part of it. Value chain refers to the range of activities. It's nothing to do with the function, the activity which goes into this at every step. When I'm designing the product, when I'm producing it, when I'm delivering it, how I'm packing it, how I'm transporting it. So this is where we try to look at what value I'm adding. And this concept came from, Michael Porter. So in short, again, it clarifies, supply chain is the interconnection of all the functions from one end to another end, while value is the link of all the activities. So one is linking the functions, one is linking the set of activity that focuses on creating and adding values. Now here you can see something about the supply chain is, obviously there is a demand for something, and then you are moving from the material supply going up to the customer. While the value chain starts from the customer. Customer says, guys, what do I need? Do I really need this or not? What design I need? What product I need? What model I need? So it starts from then planning. Planning also, we try to look around, how can we plan? How can we cut down the cost? Innovation, some new ideas around. Product development, supplier alignment. So those are the value chains. At the end of the day, customer is getting a product, but through that value chain. But in this case, the supply chain, it starts from requisition. I got a requisition from a customer, my chain starts from this side, material supplier, goes up to customer. Now, supplier as a partner, I think I can take it a very short basis on this one, because everywhere there is a supplier, whether it's the logistic business, whether it's the procurement, everywhere, even if you're outsourcing your operation functions, like Apple gives to Foxconn, you are treating them as a partner. So you could have two choices. You could have adversary type relationship, you could have partnership. Where to have what type, what, I think it gives you a tabular form when to consider which one. Now again, the push and pull system. See, in the good old days, we used to have go on making. Yes, our sales people have given us the target. We make the products. Everything is piled up. Then we start pushing in the market. Then we find, oh, this product is not selling. Then we come with the discount factors. But now, later on, the Dell were the leaders in this. They came with the pull system. And they said, guys, let the customer make a demand to me, what they need, maybe a little bit customized, then I make it. But then demand part and supply part, there has to be some line where they meet together. So it could be fully demand and the lead time would be very high. So where does the push end, where does the pull end? I think one has to work it out. I mean, if I'm in the Dell and if I say everything has to come first the demand, then I make the supply, then my lead time will be very high. But then I could say, guys, okay, these items are common, I can keep it. But when the demand comes, I convert them into the X product or Y product. So that's where you have to draw the line where it is now. And these functions are becoming more important nowadays of matching. See, I remember once I was visiting the Dell company in Malaysia and other places around. So what in the past they were doing themselves. So they have to really look around, how do I cut my inventories around. But now they pass on, outsource the work around. So in some way it is less of their headache, it is the more headache is the monkey is passed on to the supplier or the people who are assembling. But now people are talking of interacting their supplier with the manufacturer so that the demand can be much more visible. So it's a much more open, guys, okay, what is going to be the next target for us? We don't wait for the input coming from the company, they can read it automatically because systems speak to each other. Coming back to SCM in India. Now SCM is still relatively new. We come from that place where we used to have vertical integration in the companies. Whenever we feel, okay, we need this, we'll set up one new company belonging to the same family around. So we were vertically integrated. So the problem and the risk in the vertical integration was less of innovations. I have to consume my stocks. And then if any new product is coming around, I cannot jump to that because I have to finish my stock. So that concept has been there around, and we don't have still many companies which I could call as globally visible. So this is the product, I think, but it's changing now, I would say. So companies are catching up. So whichever I come across, I think they are catching up because they are trying to export abroad now. See, their supply chain is becoming more complex. And nowadays, it's not like in the good path when I started my career. We were trying to find the suppliers nearby. Now we find suppliers who can give me the best product. Worldwide, any component. Even if I have to get a bearing, if I can get it at a better price, better quality from abroad, I'll get it. Because my interest is my end product should be the best. So now supply chains are becoming complex. So from that context, the SCM terminology is picking up. I know still many companies I go around, they don't speak integrated way. They have a separate procurement department, separate logistic department, but some are moving in the direction to have integrated department called supply chain leader who has both the function under them. So change is happening as we see in the other countries. So that's what we do. So if I look at typical supply chain organizations, suppose you are the leader, You have a procurement functions where you have got a sourcing function, tactical or reactive procurements around, logistics, SCM administration. And then you have a contract management, so it's all put together to become the supply chain. So you have broadly the purchasing, operations. So in operations, we are looking at the demand, MRPs, ERPs, so material requirements planning around, total quality management, ERP, just in time, distributions is becoming also equally complex, particularly when you're supplying your goods pan-India basis. If your goods are only sold in one state, end of it, relatively easier. But if your goods are being sold pan-India basis and you're dealing with thousands of distributors, lakhs of retailers, so your distribution also becomes complex. To manage them, to have visibility on those, what is happening to my goods around, it's becoming complex. Integration, so integrating all this to ensure that you get the better performance. So logistic is, I think I've touched quite a lot. Maybe I can skip this. When it comes to transportation part, and the transportation is one of the key pillars of logistics. Obviously, when to send the goods by air, when to do by truck, when to do by rail, when to do by ship, when to do by pipeline, and lastly also by electronically when you're buying softwares on an e-basis. So that could also be there. So electronic is also becoming like some of the things we get on a royalty basis from our headquarters. So we get on electronic basis. Now components of a supply chain, some are external suppliers. You could have internal functions, and you could have external distributors, you could have your own distributors. It's a mix of all this. Global SCM factors, when we look around, now here comes complexity. When we are looking at a global supply chain management factors, obviously geographical distances. Your parts, components might be coming from X country. Or the consultant with whom you are working together is based somewhere other countries. But you work together as a team, but the guy is based somewhere else. And you find in consulting company very often, the one a consultant is based in X place, the other one is Y, and then they work as a team. So there are geographical distances around. Forecasting accuracy is very important and is still the issues around. Exchange rate fluctuations, inflations, all could lead. So whatever you have planned around the demand forecast on a particular price, but then you find that by the time you make the products, the currency has changed, inflation has become too high, your price has gone up, that could affect your demand. Infrastructures obviously is a big issue. Infrastructure, I'm not only looking from the transportation side, I'm also looking from skilled labor side. Labor is also becoming shortage. I think we get a lot of requests in ISM-INDIA. People saying, can you get this person with this type of skill knowledge around? It's not easy to get. Because majority of the people who have come up in the last 20, 30 years, they come with the traditional supply chain. But now people are looking with those people who are savvy in IT also, who can deal with big data also, who can interpret the data into information into intelligence. So skills requirements are changing. It is not the manual work around, or just working on spreadsheet. It is much more than that. Supply chain management. Now next comes, okay guys, we got a wonderful supply chain, how do we measure it? You need some yards. Otherwise, how do I differentiate between a good and a bad supply chain? Obviously, when you go to the management guys, we want to change our supply chain as per supply chain management 4.0, which is the new as per industrial revolution. We want to move into SCM 4.0, we want to bring drones, we want to bring robots, we want to bring this. It's all investment. But then you have to show that this chain which you're buying around, you're trying to upgrade the chain, is it giving you return on investment, profitability, market share, revenue growth? This is what the management looks for it. So when you make a proposal to the management, they look from this angle. Then we're also looking at the inventory turnovers, weeks of supply, inventory obsolescence. So all these are very important. E-supply chain, I think I've explained already to you on that. Okay, looking at the time, I'm skipping few things, but these are all available on the website. The typical problems along the supply chain. First thing is supply chain is very long, could be very long. Particularly when one part is coming from X country, assembled in another country, distributed to another country, packing it somewhere. And all parts are important, all functions are important, all activities are important. So you have to manage them. Both materials and information must flow among several entities. Still today, I would say, even many companies have ERP in India, but the information is still within the company. It is not well connected with your suppliers, not connected with the customer. So in short, the information which you get from the suppliers and the supplier and the customer side could be a little distorted. So companies can improve their demand forecasting by using IT supported forecast, or can also do it by extending the ERP from ERP 1 to ERP 2, which connects the supplier, tier 1, tier 2 supplier, and customers. Customer mean I'm talking of distributor, retailers, also into the chain. So if you're able to connect them, your information is moving very fast. Your forecast will be much higher. Other problems are obviously the lack of logistic infrastructures, uncertainty in delivery, quality issues. Pure e-commerce companies are likely to have more supply chain problems because they have other issues as well. Here I will only touch on the bullwhip effect, which you know very well when we're talking around one side customer, one side manufacturer. So customer says, guys, okay, next month seems to be good, economy is going well, the weather is changing, I should keep so many of this. People have got the bonus, people have got the New Year gift, I should keep this. But then the information which goes from the customer up to the manufacturer, every place gets piled up. Retailer will add up by 10%. Distributor, which is getting from thousands of retailers, pulls up another 5%. So by the time it goes to manufacturers, they say, I should not be on the loser side. Let me add up. So that's look like a bullwhip. So that means really it goes extra. And this error has to be dropped down if you can. Okay guys, now let me quickly move into the JIT, lean production. All of you know very well. This is what we are looking into this. That means particularly in the manufacturing side, we are looking for JIT philosophy. We are also looking for lean. We don't want to have too much of inventories. Production methods have to be leaner. And green also. And the focus has still not come. But I think worldwide, the focus is also moving toward green as well. That whatever we do should not be polluting the world, polluting the environments, or our neighborhood. Size of the supply chain. So this is what we do sometimes when we do the consulting work. We straightly do the mapping, one end to another end. Then we try to see what are the one we can drop. Because longer the supply chain, can we make it short? So if we're able to make it, then it's very easier to optimize it. Because longer the supply chain, your administrative cost goes up. And there are too many parameters to manage. Now comes to sustainable, as I said to you, on the environment side, water usage, air pollutions, e-distribution nowadays is very common for the e-commerce companies. Catalogs are there. You and me go online, pick the items, select the items, and items are distributed. Now, level of SCM activities. So when we talk of supply chain management pyramid, there are people who are doing at the operational level, technical level, and strategic level. Strategic level people, the senior level people, they're thinking around where is my supply chain going to be? What my competitors are doing? What changes are happening in the world? What new technology has come around? Can I adopt it? What changes I can do? Operational guy is only taking care of fulfillment at the operational level. Technical level is looking at how to run it at a lowest cost. That's all. But making the design, making the future tie up with the suppliers, making it shorter supply chain is all in a strategy. Now the SCOR models could be performance attributes, key performance indicators, the matrix. So again, I think SCOR has also come up with a lot of matrix around which performance attributes could be the reliability, responsiveness, agility. Internal side we have a cost, assets. Now those when we are putting agility is there from the angle of the customer. Customer could be distributors, could be retailer. Are they able to move quickly on this side? So we're trying to put the benchmarks, parities. Now come the type of practices. So when we talk of practices, some are called best practices, leading practices, and the worst. The simple answer I would put it this way. The best means which has been tried out somewhere. Somebody says, we want to do this. Fine, let's implement. Has anybody done it? Yes. If someone has done it in the similar environment, similar sector, similar product group, and they have reached wonderful results, you say, guys, let me do it. As you know very well, the Dell did in the pull system, many people moved into the pull system. But then come the leading practices. Somebody has gone to digitization of the supply chain. But those information may be proprietary. The software may be proprietary. So that may not be easily available to you. So those are the leading practices which are followed by one company or group of companies. But they have their own rights, they have their own restrictions, but not widely known. And the last is the poor practices, something we have been doing on for ages. The world has moved, but we are still sticking to the past. Those I would call as the poor practices. Our wastages are more, our cost of manufacturing is high, our cost of supply chain management is high. That's what it is. Now here came some, I thought, because since we're talking of supply chain, the definition we did, I think this was a survey done by Supply Chain Insight. They came with very good answers around. A responsive supply chain that can adopt as market. That's the one definition. And the majority gave the answer, which is standard answer, right product, right place, right time is excellence. But it's very difficult to elaborate that. But if somebody says, guys, my bottom line is my supply chain responsive? I get a request, I'm able to deliver. That means I'm having a supply chain excellence. If I'm not able to deliver in spite of all the best tools, best technology, best people, best talent, my supply chain is not excellent. So this is how, I think that's a more matured one, I would call it. Signs of the world class, if you look around, it must be linked to and part of the corporate strategy. Any supply chain should not be in isolation. It has to link with the corporate strategy. The game starts from there. And then you have to also look around, is it adding value to the business? Third, I would put it around cross-functional organization structure. See, supply chain people can't be expert on everything. They need to carry the people from design and other production people, other ones are operation people. It's a cross-function. Information must duplicate all the processes around. So whatever information I get, either of the competitors, either of the market, it should touch all the processes around. The marketing people should not say, oh, this information is for me. I need not tell the supply chain people. It has to be conveyed. So they can also lubricate their processes accordingly. Key areas and performance is measured. Lead times are checked and reviewed regularly. It should be customer-centered. In the past, focus was supplier-centered. Now it's becoming customer-centered. So at the end of the day, customer is driving. Continuous improvement culture. If something you're doing great, you might be the number one in the world, but still one should not stop with continuous improvement. Complacent is the worst approach. So external suppliers are viewed as partners. Trade-off analysis is to be taken around all the time. So this gives you, when you want to say I'm a world class, I think these key points can help you. Here I will touch one or two more slides on what change are happening in the world. Everybody knows industrial revolutions. We started in 1764, first revolution, then we came with the water powers, steam powers, then we came with the mass production with electric motors, the 1900, 20, 30, whatever, the computers, automations. And now we have cyber physical system. Human beings working together with the robots. So that's what we're talking of fourth revolution, which we call as Industries 4.0. So when we talk of Industry 4.0, technically we are moving, if you look at the whole revolution history, we are moving toward digitalization. Even in India, we are talking about digitalization. Some call it smart. The products are becoming smarter. Manufacturing is becoming smarter. Supply chains are becoming smarter. So SCM is also becoming SCM 4.0. The moment I call 4.0 means it is trying to use the technology of Industry 4.0. What new technologies? Big data analytics, 3D printings. Now these technologies, if I am going to use into my system, in my manufacturing, in my processes around, so naturally I am also moving toward digitalization. So this fourth industrial revolution does not affect only the production or logistics, it also affects, I would say, particularly SCM. SCM is also becoming, I would say it's very labor intensive, it's trying to become digitized, and particularly if I do the demand forecasting, it's also becoming digitized. So from that. And the key enablers for the change in the Industrial Revolution 4 are all the sensors. You know IoT is there. Cisco is working in a big way. In the US, everybody talks about this, IoT. Robotics are there. Big data are there. Now all these key enablers are becoming, when they are becoming, if I start using them into my supply chain, whether it is for loading on the truck, whether it is to make the parts. Earlier I was outsourcing someone to make my spare parts. But today my spare parts I can do by 3D printing myself in-house. And I have got a robot who works on the robotics, who works on the 3D printers, makes the parts and uploads on the truck. So you can imagine how the supply chain will look like. Somebody made a very nice comparison on the supply chain on the outward flow side. You get the request, the spare parts, you design it, give it to 3D printers, 3D printer makes it, robots picks it up, uploads on the truck, and truck is moving, the drone picks it up, delivers it. You can imagine these are going to change the supply chain. Some people will say, oh, this may take away the jobs. I won't say the job will go away, but new type of jobs will come in. Because if you don't follow this, and certainly then in this global world, how do we compete then? So that's where the change is coming around. Now this is another one I think is coming around. The last slide I want to talk about is the self-learning supply chain. One is that I always keep an eye on supply chain, go on changing myself. But if everything is connected with the data from the supplier, data from the customer, can supply chain automatically do it? So there is software like Quintic software around, which takes care of self-learning processes, which can change the setups, it can change the processes around. So this is again, I would say, around with the self-learning supply chain capital, you will have supporting knowledge to make future decisions based on actual data. Today we might be making on hunch feeling. You know, I have got 20 years experience, oh, this is my hunch, do it this way. Now here the actual data is there around of demand and supply. And this self-learning software process can change the whole process. So this is in the way I will say it coming. And I show in next 10 years, 5 years, you will see this becoming more popular. Well, friends, with this, I know this chapter is very long, this journey could have been longer. Keeping in mind, I'm trying to close it, but let's move on.